Let me know if you feel this spiritually. Hey. Let me know if you feel this spiritually.
Welcome everybody to the Unnormalized Podcast. This is your host Frankie A, and today I am joined with a super dope, cool guest from one of my, I'm such a huge fan, but I'm with Joshua Mikel, who is, you probably will know him from his role as Jared in The Walking Dead. He was also in The Act, Game Night, The Purge, Righteous Gems. His IMDb is fucking ridiculous. So, so welcome, Josh. I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. So I like to kind of start with my guests to get a little background, because we kind of see you on the big and small screens, but we really don't get to know you as a person, and I think that's what fans kind of connect to. So Josh, just tell us a little bit about like your come up, so like where you're from and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm from Conyers, Georgia, which is about 30 minutes east of Atlanta. I live in Atlanta now. I grew up there. I went to high school there. I had a mentor that kind of pushed me towards pursuing theater a little more. So when I graduated, I did a little bit of high school theater. I played Gollum in The Hobbit.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, one of the coolest things I ever got to do, actually. And then, so I kind of got bit by the acting bug there and made my way down to Florida State. I studied theater and eventually double majored in creative writing. And so it kind of was a nice union of the two that I started doing some playwriting. At the same time, I was starting to do some student films at the film school because I'd always been interested in film. And the Florida State Film School is really a lovely program and world renowned. And so I started doing some short films, met a lot of cool, up and coming directors and young directors and young, writers, and a lot of folks that are now 10 years or whatever. I graduated in 07, 13 years removed from graduating college, are writing on some great stuff and starting to direct their own features and writing, producing stuff. And, but yeah, so I went to school for theater creative writing. I did a lot of short films. I was in a band called Look Mexico.
Awesome.
We toured for a good long while. We had a veggie bus that we toured around the U.S. In 2010, I got a little worn out of that, and my dad was having health issues, so I moved back to Atlanta. And when I got back here, I signed with an agent in town, J. Purvis Talent, and I've been with them for the past 10 years now, or I guess nine and a couple months. Then just been trying to work my way up and, just make a living out of it, which I guess maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I switched over and started acting full time. So I was doing a lot of graphic design and I was doing music video directing stuff and any kind of odd job that I could do to not keep a 9 to 5. Mm-hmm. And eventually I made my way full-time acting and that's what I'm doing now.
So I'm always interested about when I talk to great actors and artists like yourself. How does the family react to because I'm a dad, so like sure. I want my son to chase his dreams, but then you also have that fear of having them secure and not have to struggle. So what was the family's reaction to you saying, you know what, I want to kind of take this thing that I'm doing, that people see a little talent in me and pursue it like as a full-time profession?
Totally. I think when I first made the choice to go down to Florida State, because it's an out-of-state school, so we were paying out-of-state fees for tuition. So it was bonkers. And I don't think I completely understood the sacrifice my parents were going to have to make. They double mortgaged their house to help pay for, to help get me through school. And, I think it was a huge stress that I don't think I completely understood at the time.
Yeah.
and but they were supportive the entire time. They came down and they would see me in shows and they'd support my work. My mom would always joke, like, have you taken an econ class yet? Understand how ridiculous this is. But as things started kind of kicking along, especially, thanks to The Walking Dead, once I got that, I think it clicked for them. My dad was always super supportive in any kind of dumb little role. Like, I had a commercial that he just loved. It was a regional commercial. But my mom, she still kept a practical brain about it. But once I got Walking Dead, and then I showed up on Talking Dead, and they gave me such an amazing life on that show, and then to have the honor of showing up on Talking Dead, and then to be able to kind of have a life outside of that, where you move on and do these conventions, because the fan base is so supportive.
Huge.
So it's, the past couple of years, it's finally clicked for my mom, like, and I used to get, part of I'd say you make about 60% or 50% of your money up front, and that, it's always nice when you're working, and then when you're not working, it's tough. But the more you work, the more residuals you're receiving, thanks to SAG after the union. So I would get those residual checks mailed to my mom's house and let her open, let her open those. And, she called herself like the, my secretary. So she'd call me and say, hey, you got another $30, which is really cool. So now she knows I'm full time, and I think appreciates the work I'm doing.
Yeah, it's tremendous when you have, especially when you take like a venture with something like, getting into the whole acting or anything in entertainment, because it's such a hard business to break through, to have that support. And that's why I love talking to guests like yourself, because, I want this show to hopefully reach people that are like at the crossroads, Josh, and saying, I can go a conventional route with a 9 to 5, or I can, really take these talents and passions. And I think that's a big thing, is that we don't, we kind of trivialize some of those dreams and passions in our life, especially early on, when people are confronted with, like, graduating from high school and going into college, and, should I pursue these routes? And I love that the message that you send to maybe some people who are, navigating this whole process of getting into like an entertainment field, and saying, like, I have to kind of go with where that magnetic draw is pulling me. And not only just like with acting or entertainment, with anything,
Right.
The getting that, listening to that inner voice, I think, is like very important, that sometimes like we don't listen to, and then we try to go a conventional route because that's what society tells us, like, that we should be pursuing. But I think a lot of people have that something that pulls them into like maybe a different direction. So to have support, especially from family, is super, super important in anything you do. So it's a great message that you send to people out there who possibly are watching this and thinking they're at the crossroads with anything. And it sometimes it takes that leap of faith, and you have to go with what your gut is telling you. So, yeah.
And I will say too, I recognize I did come from a place of privilege, even though, my mom was an elementary school teacher and my dad was an HVAC guy. But, for them, I think a lot of parents don't trust in the same way my parents did. Or don't just allow their kids to kind of do that thing. And it's tough because, putting me through school, that was a huge sacrifice. And eventually I took my loans over and paid them off, thankfully. But a lot of folks don't have that same luxury, and I understand that. And so it's even tougher for some folks to make it in the craft. And, I would say too, going to school is a decision you can make, and there's plenty of stuff I know plenty of folks who didn't study theater or performance. They started taking classes that were certainly cheaper than getting a degree in it.
Yeah.
but I think the connections that I made down at Florida State, the friends that I made, and the folks that are still operating in the business were invaluable.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's all about the experience and the connections and the networks that you build, especially and I love the way that you said it's a craft, because anything that you do in an artistic realm, you're kind of like the vessel. So I totally think it is a craft that you have to build and you have to cultivate and you have to nurture and continuously learn how to better yourself and educate yourself on the craft itself, and surround yourself with people that are conducive to that are something that you can draw from. Is a tremendous value to, I mean, and again, that's like with anything that you do, you want to make sure that you're surrounded by the people and resources and networks that are going to help you continuously like build yourself into whatever you do.
Totally.
You mentioned, I mean, I am such a huge fan of The Walking Dead. I started out, I'm started out reading the comics, and then when the show came about, it was just like a great thing for fans of the comic. And what is that like? I mean, you touched upon like the whole convention stuff that kind of goes out there, because the fan base is so huge. It's such a big part of like pop culture now. I mean, everybody knows about The Walking Dead. So what is it like to be in like a such a big cultural phenomenon series like The Walking Dead?
It's unreal. I mean, I always kind of I always kind of start this answer with saying that I auditioned for a long time for that show. I think I went back and looked, and I had like 17 auditions for that show for the course, like from season 3 to season 7 before I booked. So it was always kind of like I knew that show was a rite of passage, especially for Atlanta actors, because they cast so much regional talent on that show. And I, the more you audition, the more you kind of feel like, all right, this is going to happen. And you start, a lot of times that can undermine your performance because your expectations are so high. But eventually, I got this audition for, I guess the character's name was Jason and Garrett. It was Jared and Gavin. Jason Warner Smith, who ended up playing Gavin. We both auditioned for those same roles. And I eventually booked Jared. But it was wild because once you book it, you're still not getting full scripts. You understand how big the show is and how precious the material is, that it's not leaked, and how when something's taken that seriously, it just you're nervous about it just even looking at it. And then we get on set, and it was one of the best days I've ever had on set. Greg Nicotero was directing the episode. What we shot as 7:03, it eventually became 7:02. And when Greg Nicotero is telling you something, he's being the executive producer of the show, one of the executive producers. That sticks. That's gospel as far as the show goes. So he was giving me direction, and I was like, all right, this is something I can retain and continue keeping in this character. And I was, it's one of those magical times where you are actually having fun. And so many of us, there wasn't a lot of nerves because the only series regular that was operating in our scenes at the time was Lenny James, and he was such a cool dude, and I've loved his work for so long, especially in Snatch. And so we got to kind of all experience that together, and the crew's so cool, when you're working on a show like that they're operating at top of their game, and it was just an amazing experience. And then you book it, and it said possible recurring, and I just never thought that it would carry on as long as it did, especially being as big of a douche my character was. I just like inevitably he's all right, so I made it 2 episodes, he's gonna die before the season's over. And then you don't, I get 7:14 and I don't die. They shoot 7:15 and 7:16. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be back for season 8. That's amazing. I mean, I assume I'll be back for season 8 because ruin some stuff in season 7. And then you come back and, you keep getting the pages and you're thinking like, it's coming any day. But when it went beyond 2 episodes, I was amazed.
Yeah. I mean, you said that your character is kind of douchey and I think that character arcs like that are so important. I think especially like you said in a series like that where the unknown for an actor, that must be scary to if you watch the series. And I mean, you're talking season 7, so there's 7 seasons of shows that you watch, and characters come and go
Right.
on that series pretty quickly. And I loved your character. I just thought that I thought that he brought like a definitely a attention to the whole storyline, being such a kind of like evil or villainous kind of character. I think those characters kind of bring really good story arcs to the conversation of the show. I mean, like I that's probably, if I were you and I was an actor, that'd probably be like the top, because like I said, I'm such a fan. I'm really invested into it, not only in the show but in the comics. So I love to watch how the story evolves from, because it is a little different from the comic. So, but I love to see how the actors are bringing these characters that I'm reading on the page to life.
Right.
And I think it's such a cool thing to see how the writers and the actors kind of all pull this together and pull it off the page into live screen. I mean, like, it's to me, it's just phenomenal. So, like, talk to me about like what's the fan reaction to you, like when you're at the conventions and stuff? Because for people who don't know and don't follow The Walking Dead, there is, beyond the show, there is another pop culture phenomenon that, if you go to some of these like Comic-Con conventions, and The Walking Dead kind of has their own conventions, the actors come and they connect with the fan base. So what is that like at the conventions?
I mean, it's amazing. The Walking Dead fan base is unreal. People have been watching the show over and over again since day one. And some of these folks that show up are just so invested in what happened, and they know, they know some of your storylines better than you do, especially now being 3 years removed from having been on the show. It's just wild. Just the loveliest people, and they always approach the table a little bit tentatively, like, hesitantly rather, just because they hated my character so much. And then getting to, I always say, like, once my life on the show ended, spoiler alert, my reverse PR campaign began, that I just tried to undo all the damage that being a terrible dude on this show that so many people were watching had caused. I wanted to let people know, like, hey, I'm just an actor and just a normal guy. You don't have to hate me. Unfortunately, I didn't kill anybody. I killed Benjamin on the show, or led to his death. And fortunately, he was a good character and a lovely dude, but Logan Miller played him, and I felt terrible having to end his time on the show. But fortunately, I didn't kill any, series regulars or anybody that had been around long enough to really, add fuel to the ire that can be the Walking Dead fan base sometimes when you do something terrible.
Yep. And like beyond Walking Dead, I mentioned your IMDb is ridiculous. There's a lot of great big shows that I've watched that you've been a part of, and I love like, for those of you who may not have watched The Act, It's nominated for a bunch of awards in this award season. So what is it like to be, involved? I mean, you have Patricia Arquette, you have Joey that's in it, and Joey King, and which I love. I think she's going to have a bright up and coming career after this. But you've been in. What is that like, Josh? Like, how does that solidify this whole thing when you kind of look back at Josh at that crossroads, who was unsure, maybe tentative that you wanted to do this? Now you're part of like not only a big cultural phenomenon series like Walking Dead, but now you're in movies that are earning accolades and awards. Like, how does that solidify the decision for you? Like, it was meant to be, and I'm glad I made that choice.
Yeah, it's amazing. One of the things that I love being in most recently, I think, is I really love just having a bit part in I, Tonya, because when you start getting in films that you just love watching, like it's one thing to be in a show like Walking Dead that is such a huge phenomenon, that so many people love. I personally didn't watch the show because I just don't love super violent stuff and gore. It gets into my brain. So, I have like really vivid dreams, and I just couldn't handle it. And especially when you're going through like family issues, health issues and stuff. It's like, I don't need that right now. I want to watch Great British Bake Off or whatever. But to be a part of a film like, say, I, Tonya, it was such a gift to be on Walking Dead, and then when you move on to other stuff, you do, like, when your life ends on that show, there is a bit of like, oh God, what's going to happen now? Like, because the expectations are so high, you think, okay, well, I should be able to book these huge roles, and you really have to keep your expectations and your ego in check. Which I think was last year for me. I was really coming to terms with the idea that, like, well, you're one of many people who have been on the show and who have died on the show, and you still have to do that groundwork. You still have to keep keep pushing forward and doing the same work you've been doing the whole time. And getting used to the idea that maybe your next role isn't going to be something massive. It may be just facilitating a really good script and being a day player on a really good script, and that's okay with me. But I had to come to terms with that things weren't going to suddenly blow up. And once it did change my career, it did change my life, being on that show, but it also, I think my expectations were very, very high. And when some of that stuff didn't start coming to fruition, I was thinking like, well shit, what now? Oh, you just do the same work you've been doing the whole time. But it's just like I'm working on a film called Respect. It's directed by Liesl Tommy, written by Tracy Scott Wilson, who was a playwright. They worked together before, and Aretha Franklin. It's an Aretha Franklin movie.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, and Jennifer Hudson's playing Aretha Franklin.
Yeah, I did. I've heard some of the buzz about that coming up. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's gonna rock, and she's so good. And we're sitting around. I'd worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week, and we just just shooting some of that stuff. It's just so cool because I'm playing a real life character, this drummer for Muscle Shoals, Roger Hawkins, who was just a phenom, and has played on some of the best, some of my favorite songs growing, like Coda Chrome by Paul Simon. He played on a lot of Bob Seger. He played on Percy Sledge, Aretha Franklin, obviously. There's so much stuff that came through this Muscle Shoals place. So to be on a project like this, in what is relatively a smaller part in the film, it's still so cool, and being in Atlanta, because the tax incentives, there's a lot of cool stuff shooting here, and you get that opportunity a lot more, I think, because the talent pool is smaller, and it's, lower hanging fruit, especially, when it comes to actors who play drums in Atlanta. When I got the audition, I was like, oh man, I feel like I'm one of maybe 10 people that are reading for this in Atlanta that I know. So, those are pretty good odds when you're
Yeah.
auditioning for something. But yeah, and then I did Game Night, which I think is one of the funniest movies of the past decade.
Yeah.
It's just so good, and I'm just so proud to be a part of that. So it's getting to that point where it's like, oh man, I'm a part of really cool projects.
Yeah.
I'm excited about them. I'm excited for people to see them, and I tell people about them. It's just such a cool part of the job.
Yeah, I mean, like the body of work that you're building is really cool because like I said, I was know you from The Walking Dead, but I like to see what other stuff that my guests are kind of doing. And when I was looking at your IMDb, I mean, it just, what I say the work is sick is because of the fact that it's like really big, well known, doing really well kind of either series or movies. And it must be like something to sit back and say, wow, like I'm part of all this great work, I'm doing all this stuff, I'm building a really great body of work and resume, and it just solidifies the fact that the choices that you made to live an unnormalized life, that it actually is starting to pay off.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, man, I think that we're going to be seeing a lot more of Josh as your career develops, and I'm excited for you. Talk to me about, you mentioned this show is about like a bunch of different things. It's a melting pot of everything mixed, pop culture, and you mentioned the fact that you had some experience in music and all that kind of stuff. So is that kind of like totally out of the picture, or are you doing some stuff kind of, you're playing a drummer, right? In
Right.
respect. And so are you kind of revisiting some of that musical kind of avenues in
I
your
am,
career?
yeah. It's amazing too because my team kind of asked me like, what would you like to do this year? Is there anything we should look out for? And I was like, I would love to play a drummer in something. I've been 10 years operating in the business, and I've yet to have that opportunity. And my buddy was shooting a feature, an independent feature that hopefully will be out later this year. That's tentatively called Rag and Bone, and so I got to play a producer, and then I got to play a little bit of drums. But then to do this Respect movie, it's the first time those worlds have really overlapped, and it's just so cool. And I realize actually how bad of a drummer I am. I'm not like Roger Hawkins is such a simple pocket drummer, and his stuff is so tasteful. And my stuff is always just in your face. But yeah, so I toured with Look Mexico for 7 years. I played in a hardcore band called Kids Like Us before that. And we, through all that stuff, I think it all overlaps. And for anybody that's an artist, that you're only as interesting as the stuff you're doing outside of your craft.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I lost so much of that. I think the past couple of years, I stopped doing so much graphic art, and I stopped playing so much music, and I wasn't really doing a lot of anything that was kind of lending its color to my performances. But I've started to regain a bunch of that, and I'm really excited for what's to come here.
Good, awesome.
Yeah.
And tell us, Josh, what are some of the projects that we can kind of look out for that you got coming up? We know that now that you have Respect coming up, and I just from reading the little bit that we're getting out from the press, and Jennifer Hudson, and just anything Aretha Franklin. I mean, like, she's the godmother of like soul. So and probably destined to be gotta be some like Academy Award winning kind of stuff going on, with that. And so what other projects do you have coming up that we can kind of look forward to?
Yeah, I did a movie called Greenland. It's a Gerard Butler feature.
Okay.
Rick Roman Moir, I think is how you say his name. maybe not. Might have checked me on that, but yeah, it's a kind of apocalypse thriller.
Cool.
That I think is gonna rock. It was amazing working with Gerard Butler. I got a little I've got a pretty cool couple of scenes in there. And then Respect is going to be awesome. I did a independent feature called 133 Peachtree right now. It's about an active shooter situation at an office building. It was pretty wild shoot, intense shoot that my buddy Bryce Milburn did. I think that'll hopefully see the festival light of day later this year and hopefully be available to folks. And this Rag and Bone film I'm talking about, I think, is kind of an ode to Athens music, and that'll be cool for, I think, Georgia locals, and hopefully it'll have a larger appeal. But that's also an independent feature, so we'll see where that goes as far as festivals and whatnot. And then just auditioning for the stuff that's coming down the pipes here. I had for the first or the second time in my career, I got sliced from something, and I found out a couple of days ago, and I'm like, damn, it makes a lot of sense. But the Stephen King show, Jason Bateman show, Outsider on HBO.
Yeah.
I had a little bit part in there where I played this truck driver that picks up with one of these characters, and hilarity ensues. As much as it can in a horror thriller. But I realized, like, there was a song playing in it, and they're gonna have to get music rights, and there's stuff that happens in the scene that's kind of questionable, and so I was like, oh, this would be really easy to cut, and lo and behold, they sliced that joker. So it's wild. It's like, even now, 9.5 years doing this, it's like that nothing's certain. So yeah. I mean, all those things I listed, I hope I'm still in those movies. But I think Respect will be pretty hard to cut me out of. So I'm pretty confident that.
More confident in that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I love, like, independent short film kind of stuff. So I definitely am gonna check out some of that stuff when it does become available. I think now that whole genre of, like, independent films and short films and things like that, I guess, with the beauty of things like YouTube and stuff like that, we kind of get to see, a really raw take on film and TV that we don't get to see because stuff like that doesn't, maybe, like you said, hit the light of day, that now we get access to. And I really think in those independent roles in films that the actors really kind of give us that raw kind of approach to characters. So I love all that kind of stuff. So
it's this Rag and Bone one. Both of the Rag and Bone and 133 Peachtree, they're both pretty gritty, and well done. They definitely have an indie feel to them, and I think they'll be rad. And it is like you're saying, it's like folks can license their stuff to Netflix, to Amazon relatively easily, and move stuff on Prime, and you're right. A lot of this stuff that 10, 15 years ago wouldn't have seen the light of day or had much of an audience, can find its audience online, which is amazing.
Yeah. And that's what, some people hate, like social media and all that kind of stuff, and, streaming and all that, but it does give us a broader kind of audience to see body of works that, like you said, like 10 years we would never have seen that before. So I'll be excited to kind of keep tabs and watch these projects come out. And what I like to ask people, like, what do you have, like, what is, if you're gonna sit down off of your busy schedule and binge watch, like, what are some of the things that you're kind of like watching now? And there's a lot of great stuff out there, but when you're downtime, what is like your go-to to watch?
But my go-to has been, it's funny, like, I love scripted television, but I've been watching I watch a lot, like all of Great British Bake Off, There's another show kind of in the same vein on Netflix called Repair Shop. It's
Mm-hmm.
basically like Antiques Roadshow.
Yeah. I've seen it.
Well-produced Antiques Roadshow. I mean, not that Antiques Roadshow is not well-produced, but it's heavier produced. But yeah, that show rocks. I rediscovered 30 Rock is on Amazon now, so I've been watching the shit out of that. A lot of comedy. I've been rewatching The Office before it leaves Netflix, trying to watch the whole season or the whole series again. I love all that stuff.
So it's interesting to see, like, you play some of these like heavier characters and some intense folk, but on the personal side of things, you're more lighthearted and comedy and all that kind of stuff. So that's the yin and the yang of human nature.
Yeah, and especially in this this day and age, it's so tough. Taking in something that's dark or depressing. Like I got all the award screeners a couple years ago because I was on the SAG nominating committee.
Oh, cool.
It was amazing. You're getting every film that a studio thinks may have a performance or may be worthy of being nominated in one category or another for the SAG Awards. And I had a hard time watching some of them because it was such a bummer time in the U.S. and it's like some of these dramas and you're just like, God, I know there's amazing performances in this, but it's just soul sucking right now.
Yeah.
And so that's where I've been, I think, the past couple of years, just trying to anything that I can bring some levity into my life, because I do spend a lot of time on Twitter and get pretty politically outspoken and
join the club.
Yeah. And then suddenly I take like 5 minutes away and I'm like, oh boy, you just fought some dude in Nebraska, and knock down, drag out fight, and like, he's probably a nice guy if you were sitting across him at a coffee shop. Just like, you got to cool your burners, man.
Yeah, I agree with you. We're, kind of inundated now in, our society with a lot of dark and heavy stuff. So, we need to find some of that humor in life and light and, not take things so seriously all the time. I think, as a social worker, I practice with people taking like what we call self-care, and it's a way to detach from some of the heaviness that comes with life. And now we live in a day and age where, like you said, you can have a conversation with somebody in Nebraska, and there's just so much division that's kind of going on. And I think that we need to return back to that humanity kind of connection, and that's what you guys do as people in your craft. You guys are like the storytellers of kind of what's going on in humanity. I mean, you talked about, your project with, active shooter, like all that kind of stuff. So, it's a heavy time out there. So I appreciate the fact that you, on the downtime, after all that, want to find something to bring a little joy and not so heavy, content. We need that break,
Totally.
in life. So what about, talk to me about music. What are you listening to? What do you have on your playlist?
Oh man. I've been listening to a lot. Well, so I became I inherited my dad's record collection. So I've been
Awesome.
making my way through a lot of that stuff. Been rocking, he had a lot of Birds and a lot of Fleetwood Mac. Well, my mom and dad's record collection actually, but a lot of Fleetwood Mac, a lot of Stevie Nicks, and
love. She's like my cougar, like hall pass if I had to.
She's playing, and I'm heading down to Jazz Fest with a couple of buddies of mine, and she's playing, I think, the second weekend, so I'm hoping to catch her set. And then I see you got a Pink Floyd shirt on. I have a highly contentious opinion that I always like to. I don't know. I don't like sharing it very often, but was sharing it with some buds on set the other day. Oh, I will say, okay. So in respect, the whole Muscle Shoals band, we've all gotten really close, and it's one of the first times I'm like, man, I'm making real friends on this set, and I realized, oh, they're musicians primarily before they're actors, but I think we all kind of are, and so I don't love actors. I like musicians, and we connect on that level, and it's like the first rehearsal, I was walking away with it just feeling so good, like we connected like musically so well, and walking away I was like, yeah, that was one of the easiest first conversations I've ever had, and it was all music, and you walk away kind of feeling like you know that person in a different way. But yeah, so I aside from that old stuff, obviously a lot of Aretha Franklin and a lot of the stuff the Muscle Shoals band had been recording, but then I've always loved Minus the Bear, this band American Football. I love, and remain in constant rotation on my iPod, iPhone, any of it.
You're dating yourself a little bit better.
Yeah, exactly. Been listening to a lot of J. Cole. I love the shit out of him. What else? Future Islands, I love.
Nice.
How about yourself?
Yeah.
What are you into?
Pretty much everything. Right now, like, I guess I'm totally addicted to Billie Eilish. Love all her stuff. I love the fact that like a lot, like you rarely get an album that every track is like fire. And what made it even more interesting, because I like to like really dig in and watch like interviews about people, how they come up with concepts for like music and their albums and their work. And her and her brother basically produced the entire album in their like bedrooms. And her goal was to make 13 tracks that if she was in a room with 13 different people, those people would be represented on her album. So, I love the eclectic kind of feel. I love her voice. I'm totally addicted. It's like I could listen to her all day long. But I love like Cage the Elephant. I love pop stuff. I like pretty much everything. I like classic rock music a lot. So and hip hop, I'm an old school 90s hip hop kind of guy. And new stuff because I have 18-year-old son, so dad has to kind of keep up with, the conversation a little bit. Music is like air to me. So, it's always been that way. Just so like TV and movies, it's all like part of that makeup for me. It gives me, especially in the line of work that I do, Josh, where it can be so very intense and easy to take on other people's emotions, and I have to keep all that stuff in check.
Right.
I really kind of dig into the detachment that I get from like music. I'm not that it's not soul touching at all, but it's a good way for me to kind of, those are like what we call in my biz line of work, like wellness tools. So those are part of things that I kind of go to when things are getting a little heavy. I can kind of turn on something uplifting on my playlist, or if I'm really feeling like I want to get in touch with some emotions and on a deeper level, I can put on something a little bit more introspective. So yeah, I'm like very eclectic in what I watch on TV, what I listen to on my playlist now. So yeah, I'm like kind of like all over the place.
Yeah, it rocks. I mean, it is. It's such an escape, and I realize too that I don't know. There's periods where I go through and I don't hear a lot of music throughout the day, and I realize I'm a little on edge, and then all of a sudden I'll put something on and I'll think like, oh yeah, okay, God, thank you. Yeah, it's just it can change your day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, sorry, I forgot my contentious opinion though.
Yeah.
Pink Floyd is a superior band to Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And that so the whole band, our whole Muscle Shoals cast agrees, and that's one of the first. I don't know if they were just being kind, but I'm like, I just think they rock.
Yeah,
I think they were so far ahead of their time.
absolutely. I was just gonna say
So much.
that I like the experimental stuff that they did with their music back then. Is there are fans, and then there are people who really know the history of Pink Floyd, and like I said, I kind of dig into stuff like that. I really like to know the background and
Yeah.
like watch documentaries about how things were done. And it's interesting having an 18-year-old son that has, he hears it being played in the car, and I'm a big collector of vinyl, so I have like a lot of Pink Floyd vinyl records that on a Sunday I'll throw on and turn it up a little bit. And I explained to him, how back then the stuff that they were doing was so far beyond their time. And I attribute that with like bands like Queen, who like really kind of took the art form and really like bumped it up a notch, where and it wasn't being done back then. Things like what they were doing were probably for record labels like very, very scary stuff.
Right.
Because they didn't know how it was received. And you're talking about a band that may put out like Pink Floyd or Queen that's putting out a 7 to 8 minute track that people's attentions don't get caught, but like the music just draws you in. So like I love all like experimental bands and stuff like that are doing thing and making sounds even today, like things that are totally different. So I like a lot of independent stuff music wise. And that's the beauty of like social media and stuff like that. Like now people are like, just like the independent films and shows and stuff, people can really get their music out there in a way that we may not have never seen because it's not hitting a major record label. So I love to like just hit a hashtag like new artists, and then kind of like I do a little bit of that on my show. I have a segment on Normalized Podcast called Number One with a Bullet, and it features just those type of artists that are not signed, artists that are really kind of like hustling and doing their thing as independent artists. Just because I love commercial stuff, but I love all the unsigned, independent kind of music that's out there now. It's just like, for a guy like me, it's like a kid in a candy store.
Totally.
So like I love all that stuff. So
good time to mention too that Look Mexico is available on iTunes.
Yeah.
We got stuff on YouTube and Pandora, everything. It's all the streaming services.
So what I'll do is I will, when I post the video for Josh's episode, which will be coming out next week, I'll put links to all that kind of stuff so people can access it right from this episode of the show. So speaking of social media channels and all that kind of stuff, Josh, tell people out there how they can follow your journey. You talked about Twitter and stuff like that. Give us all your social media outlets. I'll post it in the links to this video as well.
Totally. I'm on Twitter at Joshua Mikel, I think, and then Instagram at Josh_Mikel. Those might be, those might be the Twitter might be the Instagram. I can't remember. And then IMDb. That's a good spot. I got a YouTube channel. I'm on Facebook. Just search Joshua Mikel actor or artist or something.
I'll put all the links to your channels to make it very easy for people to kind of access your work, because I think you're a phenomenal actor. I'm really looking forward to some of the projects that you have coming up, especially Respect. I love that I'm going to be like really looking forward to seeing you in the film, and now knowing that somebody that I know outside of like Jennifer Hudson and someone that I follow is going to be in the film is super like great for me, and I can't wait to go see it. So Josh, just before I let you go, what would you tell people out there who are kind of getting into this line of work and again, at that crossroads in life. It doesn't have to be specific to, the industry, but just a piece of knowledge that you could spit for people that, maybe thinking about, and it's not even just as a youngster, but we go through those life changes and those crossroads throughout our whole entire lifespan. So what would you tell somebody who's kind of at a crossroads in life that really is like, yeah, it's easy to go the conventional route, but, what's this whole unnormalized kind of path that I can take in life?
Right. I think it's like, if you're considering, and it's true about all the arts, but whatever you're doing, your interests outside of that particular art are going to color your art so completely. Any sort of craft you take up, how interesting of a person you are outside of that craft, and I've said this before, but the interests you have outside that are only going to influence what you're doing in the craft. And for in the instance of respect, I had played drums for a long time. I understood that life very well, and so it crossed over very easily. A lot of folks, you end up playing folks that you end up playing athletes, or you end up playing plumbers, or a million things. It's not a all or nothing commitment. I think it's not just doing it when you have the time. You really have to carve out time for yourself to pursue the arts and pursue a craft, and it's thankless. But I think one of the better pieces of advice I got from a teacher, this guy Gary Garrison, who was a playwright, and he would hold some classes at a little playwriting conference I'd make it to every once in a while, and one of his biggest pieces of advice is understanding your artistic age. So how long have you been practicing your craft? Well, I've been working in my craft now. I've been acting since high school, 2000. So I've been acting for roughly 20 years. In film and TV, I've been doing short films and film and TV for maybe 15 years. As a 15-year-old, I'm still a kid. I'm still getting my feet under me. I'm starting to understand the world a bit differently, and it truly feels that way. 15 years in the craft, I still feel anxious when I get on set. I'm still learning a ton, but it doesn't come second nature. But now I'm getting to the point where I can have these real conversations, and I get in a scene, and I feel like, that's a real moment. That's not just some canned plastic sort of thing. It just takes time, and so many of these folks, I realize too, the further along I get in the business, so many of these folks that have these amazing careers have been at it a very, very long time. A lot of these kid actors whose parents were actors, who, they have all that. It's not just that their parents had the connections to get them into these movies. They've been within the business for so long. So you really have to be forgiving to yourself when you start, when you start comparing yourself to other folks that are operating in that craft that you're pursuing, and think, okay, well, how much time have they spent working towards it, and how much time have I spent working towards it? And understand, you may be the same age, but the artistic age is what matters.
What matters, yeah. And I think that's a great point to end on, is that Josh is talking about the artistic age, but anything that you do that you have a passion for, that you want to turn that dream into reality, it takes hard work, and it's an investment. And it's something that you have to continuously be open to learning more, and never saying that you've learned it all. I think when we close ourselves down to opportunities to learn more, that stunts the growth of what we possibly could do. And with that whole vessel or that journey. And I think what Josh says is a great point, to just, if you could take that whole concept of the artistic age and transpose that to whatever it is that you guys are doing out in life, and applying that kind of concept, I think it's a great way to kind of keep things in perspective when you're moving along their journey. So I love that. That's a great point. It's something that I can transpose into work that I'm doing, with people who are navigating their own life journeys, and take that artistic age and say, like, where are you, right now in your age of things, not a number age, but a wisdom and mentality and all that kind of stuff. So I really
would share too. I have a friend, Terrence Chisholm, who is an amazing playwright, and he has since started writing for the TV show Boomerang. Just an amazing creative. But he put something in one of his plays that I've always held on to is there's good in all work, So whether or not you're doing something actively, taking acting classes or painting classes or whatever, like I said, that stuff is going to influence your life and your career, and you're going to be a more interesting actor and a more interesting person just by doing things outside of, like, the most boring people you'll ever meet are just actors, some of the most vapid, exhaustingly, exhausting people to be around are just actors. You nothing to talk about, because their skin is filled up with pretending to be someone else, Yeah.
And very interesting kind of concept there. So everybody, I want you guys, again, I'm going to put all the links into the comments of this episode. So I want you guys not to also follow Josh on his journey in his career and life on social media, but I also want you guys to go check out some of his work. If you're not familiar with Josh, get your ass familiar with Josh, because I think we're going to be seeing a lot of him. If you're not a fan of The Walking Dead, check out The Walking Dead, and the pop culture phenomena that it is. If you haven't seen The Act, if you haven't seen The Purge, if you haven't seen Righteous Gems, I'm going to post Josh's IMDb in the links as well. So go to his IMDb. There's tons of great work that he's done in some great films and TV. So, Josh, I really appreciate you coming on to the Unnormalized podcast, talking to me about just life and music and all things that kind of make an interest of that we have in common. And I really appreciate the time, and I really look forward to seeing you in Respect. I can't wait for it to come out. And feel free to, whenever you have availability, to make a Normalized podcast a home where you can come talk about some of your projects. And, we touched upon some political stuff, and you can also come back and talk about some stuff with that, so as we get closer to the 2020 election. So feel free to kind of make this a home. We will welcome you back at any time to talk about projects and things that you got coming on.
Heck yeah, dude. Thank you so much. And I wanted to say, too, thank you for the work you do.
Thanks.
Social work is a tough career path. My girlfriend's a speech language pathologist, so she operates with social workers a lot. And, it's certainly something that is thankless, I think, many times. And
very thankless.
Yeah. I got such a cushy career, and you guys are doing the real work, the hard work, and my only hope is that we, through some of this entertainment, you get some respite from doing that tough stuff.
Absolutely. So, you keep doing the work that you do, and I'll keep doing the work that I do, and that's what makes the connection and the world go round. So, again, this has been the Unnormalized podcast with your host, Frankie A. and Joshua Mikel, and everybody get unnormalized.
Heck yeah. Thanks, Frankie.
Entonces date prisa, quítate la camisa. It's me and you so high like we in the visa. Me gusta cuando tú me besas a mí.